Okay, welcome to assignment 2, going to task 4 and beyond. So task 4 asks that you get the maximum of the velocity that you calculated. So you could go to the MATLAB documentation if you don't know what function to use. The answer is just to write max velocity, so very easy. MATLAB makes these tasks super easy. But if you didn't know what to do, you would go to the MATLAB documentation and you write the word max, pick the first one. This is a bit harder to understand, but you will in time understand what these things mean. And they go down to the description and down to the examples, which make it even easier. Okay? Just like that. Right, so that's it. And task 5 asks for the max of your acceleration. So that's again just max accel. And what I would suggest you do is, because you have a plot of these two things, you can uncomment them, not uncomment them, remove the semicolon. Let's run the pretest, why not? And we can see what value they are and check on the graph to see if they're correct. Okay, max velocity 147. Let's look at our graph. That's the black, the velocity. 100, 120, 140. Yep, looks correct. Acceleration 85. We look on the right now, which is the yellowish one. 0, 60, 80. 80. Yep, that little point's about 85, so it's correct. Just like that. Okay, so now task 6 is a bit more complicated. It starts off by saying, get all the times that are below 5 seconds. So I give a link in the documentation of how you select parts of vectors which satisfy a condition. And what we can do is we can create this condition vector, this condition positive, by writing out a vector here, less or equal to 5, is going to replace this bit here with another vector where in each element of the vector it would be 0 if the element from time was greater than 5, and it would be 1, so begin with 1s if it is smaller than 5. So if we just leave that print out, maybe we should do a plot of that actually. Let's do hold off and let's just plot this thing, because it's a bit difficult to look at a vector just by printing it out. It's better to plot. Let's see if we can just plot. I've never plotted this vector before, so I'm not sure what's going to happen. A vector of 0s and 1s. Okay, it's a bit awkward. So that's the yellow one, isn't it? Because we're on the right axis. So we forgot to change over the axis. Let's go back to our left axis here. Axis left. Let's choose a color here so that we know what we're dealing with. Blue, maybe red, and do that again. So the part of the acceleration is still here. I think I have to clear the plot somehow, but we can clearly see the red of the 0s and 1s, okay? So it starts off by giving in times, is this time? I think it is, yeah. No, it's not. We need to add time if we want to be specifically time on the left, and we should do that. Let's do that. Let's plot time on the left. Okay, we'll redo that. Just to make sure that we know what we're looking at. If we don't put what the x-axis is, there you go. So, before 5, this thing was 1, was a vector of 1s, and after 5 was a vector of 0s. So when you pass a vector of 1s and 0s to another vector, so if I get, so now let's remove this, and now let's calculate t positive. I want to select from this vector only the parts that are below for time equal 5. And what you do is you just pass this vector inside here. Because it's got, wherever it has a 1, it will select that value for this vector. Wherever this has a 0, it will not add that, it won't have that value. So on the left here will only be the times that were below 5. So a nifty little trick this. And finally, task 7 Oh, we should do a plot. Again, if you have not got a pretest for something, you should plot to make sure you got it correct. So how are we going to do this plot? It says that these are the times at which the acceleration was positive. Now, let's think about this. This is a much smaller vector, this is a different size vector. How do we do this? Again, we use this condition, okay? But because the acceleration, the vector acceleration is too smaller than the time vector, we have to do a little adjustment here, I guess. We could do a little adjustment. So, if you remember, the distance, the velocity vector is one smaller than the distance, and the acceleration vector is one smaller than the velocity. So the acceleration vector is two smaller than the time. So to do this, this condition here, I was assuming that the time vector of the full size, but this thing has two less. So what we're going to do is we're just going to remove the first two elements, okay? That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to remove the first two elements from this. And then the same thing over here. I need to remove the first two elements here so that these two vectors are the same size. Okay, and now let's make this red so that we can see it. And we also again should have the axis on the left because it's a bit weird having the axis on the right. This is how you check if you get your answers right. So we don't need actually, I want that to be on the right and I want it to be hold on because I want to overlay it with a plot that's above. I want to compare. Here goes. Aha, beautiful. So you see that the red is the new one, yellow is the old one. They're exactly the same, except that the acceleration in this one is only for the times below 5, and it's all positive. Look, here's the 0 of the acceleration. It's all roughly positive. So this is when the dragster was accelerating. Okay, so before we finish this mini clip, let's do the mean of the acceleration during the time it was accelerating. So it's the mean of the dragster's acceleration during the times in t-pos. So to do that, you're going to use the mean function. Again, go to MATLAB documentation to look it up. You want the mean of the acceleration, and you want it only during the times that it was accelerating, so the times below 5. And here you go. And we don't need this anymore. This is all good and done. Let's hold off. Maybe we want hold off there. Hold off. And then run a pretest just to make sure everything's in order. Hopefully there's not full of errors everywhere. So what pretests do we get? Acceleration, max. This is just because we've not finished all of the items yet. Okay, there is no other pretest there, so that's good. That's all we need for this one.